There's a poll that came out just a month ago. Over 60% of the American people support Medicare for all. But like many other aspects and problems facing our society, we're taking on very powerful political and economic forces. We're taking on the insurance industry and the hospitals and everybody else who want to profit off of healthcare. The insanity right now that a significant percentage of people who get diagnosed with cancer go bankrupt. They lose their life savings. How insane, how cruel is that? We lose tens of thousands of people every year because they're uninsured or underinsured and they don't get into a doctor's office when they should. How crazy is that? So the issue is not whether or not our current healthcare system is broken. Everybody recognizes that when you're spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as any other nation, and 85 million are uninsured or underinsured, yeah, it's a broken system. No one disagrees on that. But I want you all to imagine the day will come when people get sick or their kids get sick, or they have to go to a nursing home or they need dental care, they don't have to worry about the cost. And that we have dedicated, motivated healthcare workers who worry about the patients, not themselves as nurses or doctors filling out endless forms and arguing with the insurance industry. Your job is to keep our people healthy, not to argue with the insurance industry. So I want to again thank you for what you're doing, and I want you to know we are going to win. We're going to win this fight, and NNU is going to help us take us over the finish line. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ranking Member, and to Senator Blumenthal. You know, I have my prepared remarks, and as I sit here, it is so emotional for me. I just want to say, number one, I am sorry on behalf of the United States government, because regardless of who they claim to be, I am telling you that the best of us is present here. And we represent the United States as well. So I want you to take this heartfelt apology, something that I'm sure that they have not ushered a word to you about. And I also want to acknowledge how heroic you are. We are living in some of the scariest times that this country has ever seen, yet you have not backed down. I have seen your faces more than once. You refuse to go silently and into the dark. You are the light that they are afraid of, and I am so grateful for you being so heroic at such a scary time. When the history books are written, they will know your stories because you decided to be brave in the face of those cowards. So Representative Khanna brought up consequences. And I'm the type of person that is constantly looking for how do we come up with solutions. I became a lawmaker because as a lawyer, I just didn't feel like it was good enough to stand in the courtroom and just argue each case at a time. I wanted to change the laws. And right now, it doesn't seem like we have courage as it relates to the elected officials to do what's right, because this honestly is not right or left. This is right versus wrong. I don't know how any party can say that they are the Christian this or that. And then see this treatment of human beings. I really don't care your status. I get that everyone here today is a United States citizen, but honestly, I have said over and over and over that as a Black woman, all I can think about is the slave patrols. And the reason I bring it up is because history matters. You said it best. You specifically talked about these injustices and how this is circular. That is the truth. But what I'm saying is that if you believe in humanity, if you believe that we live in the land of opportunity and the land of free, then why should it matter that you're just scared about what may be coming for you? You should just be about doing what is right. And that is why I'm so mad. So I want to talk about some things that I want y'all to do, because I know organizations are standing with you. They're supporting you. We know we've got great lawyers. Some of the things that I've been thinking about is this particular president, if you've not noticed, he has somehow managed to let seemingly every terrible criminal he could find go free so long as they are his friends or whatever it is. So I fully anticipate that going forward, he is going to say, everyone that is ICE, you are absolutely going to be protected from any prosecution once we lose, because we're going to lose because these policies are not right. I think it's going to be very important that, number one, you make sure you keep up with any and all evidence that you have of what took place. It's most likely going to be those local prosecutors that are going to have to go after these people. We have to make sure that they are held accountable, because there is no reason for us to have those images and you to have these experiences and you to experience this trauma. And then everybody say, well, we tried our best and our best just wasn't good enough. No, we have got to think outside the box. We have got to be aggressive, and we have to stand up for what is right. I don't care what your color is. I don't care what country you came from. We are a country of immigrants. It is time for us to unite and stop allowing people to divide us. So again, I just wanted to say thank you. I've had a chance to meet some of you before, and with that, I will yield back.
Texas Republicans are getting very, very nervous about what is shaping up to be a brutal and strange primary for U.S. Senate in their party. You see, Senator John Cornyn, right, who's served for over 20 years, is now facing a tough race for re-election. He's marred by low approval ratings, but crucially, he is fighting off a primary challenge, two of them actually, one from the state's far-right Attorney General Ken Paxton and Republican Congressman Wesley Hunt. Now, on the Democratic side, a rising star in the party, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, has just thrown her hat in the ring, announcing her candidacy hours before the state's filing deadline yesterday. She will now face off against just one primary opponent, young, charismatic state representative James Tallarico. That's after former Congressman Colin Allred, who ran in the last cycle, ended his Senate campaign yesterday to run for a new House seat instead. Joining us now is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Congresswoman, it's good to have you on. This was, as far as I could tell, there was even reporting saying that you had kind of like twin forms filled out and twin cashier's checks about whether filing for the House or the Senate race. So this came down to the last second. Like, take me through what pushed you over.
Yeah, so I'll tell you that I have been telling a lot of people that I was closer to a yes than a no. But I was really concerned. Number one, I was concerned about Democratic unity. I talked a lot about the fact that I really wanted us to have a very strong ticket. And instead of kind of having our star power put into one race, I wanted to see if we could somehow make it to where you could have an option for governor, say if you had nothing but state experience. See if we could have an option for, Senate. See if we could have lieutenant governor, attorney general, and really give different parts of the state of Texas someone to vote for and be excited about. And it's kind of hard to get around a state of 30 million people. We saw that Beto did it. He went to 254 counties, but Beto also literally worked himself into a sickness. He ended up being hospitalized more than once. And so I didn't feel like it made sense that we should just kind of have, maybe one big kind of race. But hey, at the end of the day, I thought that once the Supreme Court did what they did, that we absolutely needed to do something about getting the right person into the Senate. And it was interesting listening to your previous conversation. The oversight for the Senate, for the Supreme Court, it comes from the Senate. So those are the things that I was looking at, as well as my actual experience on the federal level, as well as being an attorney, and knowing that we need to change the Senate map if we're really going to get things like voting rights, if we're going to get reproductive access, if we're going to get health care. We've got to change what's happening in the Senate.
So there's a bunch of stories today about how your entrance into the race is welcome news for John Cornyn. There's like anonymous quotes from his staffers saying like, we're thrilled. There was people citing the fact that the Senate campaign arm of the Republicans had commissioned a poll that showed you ahead in the primary, that they were essentially trying to kind of pull you into the race, with the logic being that your perception and coding among Texas voters is as too anti-Trump or as too sort of polarizing to plausibly win a statewide election in a state that Democrats have, as we all know, not won a statewide election in like decades. What's your response to people who say, even people who are sympathetic to you, who are like, is this the person that could win like 8 to 10% of Republican voters necessary to win this race?
So I actually disagree with the characterization that we have to get 8 to 10%. What we know is that in this last election, approximately 51% of eligible voters in Texas voted. What we've not had is someone that could energize our base. That is abysmal. We are always one of the lowest voter turnout states. When you look at when we ended up getting 2 Democratic senators in the state of Georgia, just know it was because they got their voter participation up. And so that's what we plan to do. What we were testing for was we wanted to know, can I excite people that normally don't vote? And the answer was simply yes. In addition to that, we looked at Beto's results because that is the best election for us to look to.
Yep.
It was a Trump response type of election.
Yep.
And ultimately, we know that he won black and brown folk over overwhelmingly. And so am I in polling.
So in the Warnock and Ossoff examples, which do strike me as the closest model, right? In both those cases, it was a bit of both and, though, right? They definitely juiced turnout, and they definitely got high levels of turnout, but they also did win crossover voters. I mean, there's a pretty significant slice, and particularly if you look at those precincts and those Atlanta suburbs, particularly. So it does seem like both of those are necessary, particularly when you're looking at the numbers that you're staring down in Texas, which is, again, numerically, it's not an easy place to win.
No, I think that you're absolutely right when you say that. But I think what we've got to look at is that when you look at, say, the district in Tennessee and the fact that Trump had won by a little over 20 points, yet somehow it swung to a single digit race, then we know people that voted for Trump. Well, some of them are regretting those votes. We just saw an election today down in Miami where a Republican was outed, and we know that they hadn't been able to win in 30 years down in that area. We also know what happened in Mississippi where they flipped 2 Senate seats. We also know what has happened in Georgia where they were able to get 2 statewide seats. So here is the reality. I don't think anyone who is super in love with Trump would ever vote for me or any other Democrat. That is just the reality. I think what it is who is going to talk to people and make them understand that they will fight for them. That is why you have Mondami Trump voters. That is why you have AOC Trump voters. That is why you had Obama Trump voters. Let me tell you something. Mondami has not backed down whatsoever from his rhetoric against the president. In the Oval Office, he stood there and he said what he said about him being a fascist, yet he was able to win those voters. So Democrats that believe the only way that you can win is by being soft and sounding like a Republican, that is not true. What people are looking for are people that are tough and are fighters and are going to fight for them, fight for better health care, fight for access to jobs, fight for education. That is what they're looking for, and that's what it is that I have to offer.
Yeah, I want to just, you mentioned this, so I want to bring it up. In Miami, Miami had a mayoral election tonight. It was a runoff. That city has not had a Democratic mayor, I think since the 1990s, nearly 30 years. The last election in 2021, the incumbent ran for a second term and he won by like 75 to 15, essentially. So tonight, the Democrat is going to win by between 10 and 20 points when all's. I mean, so there is something happening in the country right now. I want to play very quickly your ad that I thought was pretty interesting. This is the first ad I've seen from your very new campaign. Take a listen.
She's a very low IQ person.
Somebody said the other day, she's one of the leaders of the party. I said, you got to be kidding.
Now they're going to rely on Crockett. Crockett's going to bring them back.
This is obviously a shot across the bow that this is going to be a campaign about Trump. Do you think Trump, that Trump is going to figure prominently in this one way or the other?
I think so. I think it's hard to say that he's not. I mean, when you see election wins like the one that you just referenced, obviously it's Trump's policies that are on the ballot. Right now, we have a senator that has decided that he won't fight for Texans, but instead he's decided that he will do whatever Trump tells him to do. We are one of the largest trade states in this country, in this nation. And unfortunately, we have somebody that will not go up against the president to protect our people that are doing trade in Texas when it comes to the tariffs. Or we can talk about the record-breaking number of farmers and ranchers that are filing for bankruptcy. And we do everything bigger in Texas, including agriculture, and he's not fighting for them. So I think right now it's just going to come down to the basics. Who's going to have your back? And the answer is Jasmine Felicia Crockett.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a new entrant in that U.S. Senate race. We'll be right back.
Texas Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is shaking up the primaries by launching a bid for Senate. and she talked about why she's using her harshest critic in her campaign ads. Take a look.
I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. Crockett. Oh, man, oh, man. She's a very low IQ person.
Somebody said the other day she's one of the leaders of the party. I said, you got to be kidding.
Now they're going to rely on Crockett. Crockett's going to bring them back.
Your campaign launch video solely showcases the president insulting you repeatedly. Why did you choose that approach here?
If the president cannot keep my name out of his mouth, then who is it that would be better to make sure that they are in the U.S. Senate to hold him accountable? I am the one that he is afraid of. We are talking about a seat that will absolutely flip the control of the Senate over to the Democrats. This is bigger than the state of Texas.
She's going to be here on January 6th to talk about this. But what do you think of her campaign? I think it's kind of interesting.
Well, speaking of disagreeing respectfully, listen, it's been about 30 years since a Democrat was elected statewide in Texas. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't try to run. They absolutely should. That's a good campaign ad if you're running to be queen of the resistance, if you want to be the face of taking on Donald Trump. If you're trying to win a red state that he has won every time he's been on the ballot, where John Cornyn's won there 5 times, you got to talk about not just what you're against, which is Donald Trump. You have to talk about what you're for. This is my frustration. If purely being against Donald Trump was a winning strategy, Dems would have beat him in 2016 and they would have beat him in 2024. I would have loved to hear, I'm Jasmine Crockett and I'm going to fight for affordability. I'm going to fight for the working class. I'm going to bring manufacturing back. Talking about issues, Texans aren't looking for you to take on Donald Trump. They just want competent leadership for the state.
Texans are plain-spoken people, just like everybody else. They know that the economy is going down, down, down. He's underwater with the American people. His approval rate is 39% or something, and with Hispanics, it's 38%. And she assumes that they read and that they can see that the economy is in the toilette.
I just felt like it was about her and Donald Trump and not about the people.
I agree with that, but that's just one campaign ad. Give the girl a minute.
Well, the part
The thing I like about her is she's a badass and she gets under his skin.
I agree. What's shown to win
respectfully.
I respectfully agree and disagree, but mainly because I do think we're seeing now with the elections we've witnessed that have been overwhelming victories were about the people and what they needed to hear. That has been lost in the Donald Trump era in general. But what I did like about it is we're seeing unprecedented numbers, dozens of people leaving politics because they are so disheartened and discouraged at how things aren't getting done. So I kind of appreciated her energy that she went harder when everyone else is kind of walking away. And the other thing I know you said this, it doesn't mean she shouldn't run when you said Texas hasn't elected someone, but I'm such a big, I don't like when people say the polls show this, or no one's ready for a woman president, or they aren't until they are, and you don't know if it doesn't try. So I look at it as if someone told me no one's been elected here, go for it. I'd be like, challenge accepted. Like, I kind of like that. It could be an upset. It might be a long shot, but I think that's when you go harder.
Well, I loved it. I thought it was terrific. I wanted to see that kind of energy. I think we need an opposition party. I don't think we need business as usual. I think Zohran Mamdani proved that. I think that that you would have said, years ago, there's no way that a black senator and a Jewish senator would be the senators representing Georgia, but they are. So I think
how about a black president?
How about a black president? There have only been 14 black senators in the history of this country. Only 2 black governors in the history of this country. I think she could be the 15th black senator in the history of this country. Remember, Texas has 3 million black voters, the most black voters in the country. More than Georgia, more than Florida. And I'll also say this, Texas is gerrymandering, the Texas Republican are gerrymandering her district. So her district is now going to be a Republican district. She represents 766, I think, 766,000 in that district. That district is being taken away from her because when the Republicans can't win, they cheat. And so I will say this, as a senator, that is the truth. And as a senator in Texas, she won't be representing 766,000 voices. She will be representing I'm right, 30 million voices. And I say, run, Jasmine, run.
I'm just telling you, no one loves that ad more than John Cornyn, who I should correct, has been elected 4 times. He's running for his 5th time. Donald Trump won John Cornyn, who she's running against,
Isn't he
the incumbent Republican, by Ken Paxton. He's in a primary fight. Either way, Donald Trump won Texas by millions of votes. So even if she won everyone in her House district, all 700,000, she wouldn't make up the gap. I'm all for her running, but I would point to James Tallarico, who's also running as a Democrat. He's a state rep in Texas. He talks about issues. You don't really hear him talk about Donald Trump. He talks about what Donald Trump is doing that might be hurting Texans, but it's not all about what's happening in the national race.
Texans are tired of what's going on.
Yeah,
Even
think so.
Texans are tired.
I think so.
And so, you know what? I will say, do your thing. Do your thing the way you think you should do it. Because just because people voted for him, I don't think the same people who voted for him then are happy to vote for him now because they don't like what he's doing.
But I think there's a bridge between Donald Trump and Jasmine Crockett. James Tallarico might be that.
But I don't know. I don't know
more.
why you need to have either or. They can both run.
Yeah.
I don't see why I'm for people who give a damn about the country.
Yeah.
I don't care how many of you there are. If you give a damn about the country, get out there and do your best to get people to vote for you. Don't let anybody tell you don't do it because it didn't happen before. Because one of my favorite governors had been the governor of Texas. Do you remember? She was...
Oh, Richards.
Oh,
Ann
Ann
Richards.
Richards. Yeah, Ann Richards.
I'm sorry,
She was a
that
liberal.
woman
She was a
was
liberal.
terrific.
Yeah.
So
true.
maybe it's taken 20 or 30 years to get somebody else terrific in. If it takes that long, it takes that long. But find the best people. Don't let anybody tell you, not them, but them. It's a mix, and anybody can do it. We can all run. Damn.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I must tell you that as you spoke, my little pen got to going, as well as a couple of other people up here, because you said something to the effect of slick con man calling and tricking people. I thought that was profound, because it seems like that's how we got into this mess. A slick con man has tried to convince people that healthcare should not be available to everyone. And that's why right now there are millions of Americans that have no understanding of what will happen. They don't know if they are going to lose their health insurance or not. And frankly, after the big ugly bill was passed, we know that there's going to be a minimum of 17 million people that will lose their coverage. But let's talk about these subsidies, because that's what we're here to talk about today. In a matter of days, Americans across the country will either begin paying thousands of dollars more per month for health insurance or losing their coverage entirely. In fact, more than 350,000 people, all of whom live in districts represented by Republicans on this committee, will lose their coverage entirely. 25,000 of Chairman Jordan's constituents will lose coverage. 30,000 of Chairman Van Drew's constituents will lose coverage. 20,000 of Chairman Fitzgerald's constituents will lose coverage. And they have the opportunity right now to sign the House Democrats' discharge petition to force a vote to extend the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies for 3 years. I appreciate that the chairman said that he doesn't feel like it should be permanent. I appreciate that it sounds like the chairman also did not have a fix. But what the chairman did not say is whether or not he would sign the discharge petition, which is only asking for an extension, and considering the fact that the last time I checked, the House, the Senate, and the White House are run by Republicans, hopefully within the next 3 years, they could actually find a plan. But nevertheless, I invite my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to do right, not by my constituents, but by their own. Instead, they've called this performative hearing to try to distract the American people from what is about to hit them. The fact that they have sold out their constituents because Donald Trump and their billionaire donors told them to do so. Their fake concern for fraud, waste, and abuse, and their talking points on lowering the cost of living, well, it's all BS. Every single bit of it. They gave these billionaires permanent tax cuts, and they are sacrificing the average American to pay for it. They canceled grants that schools were using to improve student outcomes. They stole resources that farmers and rural communities used to expand local food systems. They took resources from preschool and early childhood education programs. They dismantled programs that helped tackle homelessness and assist seniors. They eliminated medical research grants that have helped thousands of people battling cancer and Alzheimer's. They've done all that, but won't even help their constituents see a doctor, buy food, pay rent, or pay for childcare. They're okay with corporate socialism, but if you're a teacher or a police officer or a student or a sanitation worker, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you can't afford childcare, if you can't pay your rent, if you can't feed your children, if you can't afford to pay for college, if you're struggling with medical debt, well, you're SOL in Trump's America. Congressional Republicans don't believe they have the responsibility to look out for their constituents. They've been a reckless rubber stamp for Donald Trump, who doesn't even believe that there's an affordability crisis. In fact, he thinks affordability is, quote, a hoax. While their constituents were lining up by the hundreds at food banks across the country, the president was literally mocking working class Americans at his Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party. These people have shown us what they prioritize, and it isn't stopping fraud, waste, or abuse. In fact, President Trump has pardoned criminals who have stolen more than $1 billion from Americans. The only thing they care about is making the rich richer at the expense of their own constituents. That's been Donald Trump's focus, and congressional Republicans have gone along with it. So this hearing is nothing more than another Republican attempt to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. It's performative to distract your attention away from the fact that they don't have a health care plan, just concepts of one. And I do want to make sure that I cover one other thing that the chairman spoke about. He specifically said that he's concerned about the fraud. He's not giving us numbers, but I can give you some numbers. If we're concerned about how much money it may be costing us because systems are not perfect, we have no perfect systems. We have always had some level of fraud in anything that we have because there's no such thing as perfection walking on this earth. But what I can tell you is that I seriously doubt whatever level of fraud it is that the chairman is speaking of, I seriously doubt that it amounts to the over $200 million that the president is trying to line his pockets with of taxpayer dollars because he feels like he's been aggrieved. I can probably tell you that the $40 billion that he sent to Argentina, I'm sure that that $40 billion is probably an amount that also is a lot larger than the alleged fraud that has taken place. So if we are going to talk about being fiscally responsible, if we're going to talk about how we can keep people insured, how we can make sure that people are actually going to live to see another day, and if it's really about a concern about the fraud, then maybe rein in the person that is wasting money or deciding the taxpayers should just line his pockets to the tune of over $200 million. And with that, I will yield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. In 3 weeks, the ACA tax credits expire. So we've got a simple choice in Congress. We can give millions of American families more affordable health insurance by extending the ACA tax credits, or we can force on them drastic premium increases. That's the choice. Any other rhetorical exercise today is a diversion and a distraction. My colleagues want us to change the subject. They want to talk about the problem of fraud, the perennial problem of fraud. And there are lots of things we can say about that, and maybe we can make some progress on it, but that's a completely different issue. 15 years ago, the ACA passed, and this historic achievement gave millions of Americans who'd been priced out of healthcare access, actual access to health insurance and to life-saving medical care. With enhanced premium tax credits passed by Democrats, coverage became more affordable for tens of millions of people who did not have access to health care. But now, President Trump and our colleagues want to turn the hands of the clock back. They want to make health insurance more expensive for the American people. They want to allow tax credits for health insurance to expire. They have a solution to the affordability crisis in America, which they call a con job and a Democrat hoax, but which hundreds of millions of Americans live with every day. And their solution is to increase health insurance premiums for 22 million Americans by 75% on average. And for many Americans, their monthly premium payments are doubling or tripling. A 60-year-old in my district who makes $82,000 a year will see their premium increase jump from $581 to $1,552, a stunning 167% increase. A person making the same salary in our distinguished Chairman Jordan's district will see a 248% jump in insurance rates, with the monthly premium increasing from $581 to $2,022. Thanks to the Kaiser Family Foundation for breaking these down according to congressional districts, so members of Congress can understand what's about to happen to our own people. While our people are looking at working with no health insurance, sending their kids to school with no health insurance, trying to avoid getting the measles under the leadership of Secretary Kennedy at HHS with no health insurance, our colleagues just say, let them pack the emergency rooms, let them take 2 conspiracy theories, and call me in the morning. So we talk about health care for Americans, and they change the subject to talk about fraud. That's an old trick. When we talk about Social Security, they talk about fraud. When we talk about Medicare, they talk about fraud. When we talk about Medicaid, they talk about fraud. All because they oppose these programs for the people. Not the fraudulent parts created by criminals who we need to chase down and prosecute, but rather the fairness parts created by Congress for the American people. So now we talk about extending health insurance, and they want to talk about fraud. Well, why does President Trump have any standing to lecture anyone about fraud? Think about that for a second. He was criminally convicted by a unanimous jury of his peers on 34 different felony counts of falsifying business records to conceal illegal payments he made. He was found guilty of defrauding the state of New York by lying about real estate values, and he owes hundreds of millions of dollars in ill-gotten gains to the people of New York. But now he wants to distract us from their sweeping attack on the health care rights of the people by claiming to be enemies of fraud. What a joke. The president just used his pardon power to commute the sentence and forgive the fines of a guy, a fellow criminal convict, who defrauded the government of $1 billion by exploiting nursing homes and other senior care health facilities. One of the biggest frauds ever committed in the history of the United States. He pardoned more than a dozen criminals who stole hundreds of millions of dollars from Medicare and Medicaid from the American people. He pardoned criminals who abused elderly patients and subjected them to unnecessary treatments that were described by the prosecutors in those cases as horrific and barbarian. And if anyone wants to challenge me on any of these facts, I will read to you from the cases. I will give you the documentation. You might prefer not to look at who Donald Trump is pardoning, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. Not only did he free unrepentant, incorrigible fraudsters over the last 11 months, he relieved them of their fines and the restitution that they owed to pay their victims, a total right now of more than $1.3 billion and running. Before Trump, all the presidents had made the people actually pay off their fines and their restitution, but not this president. A few weeks ago, he pardoned the former president of Honduras, Oscar Hernandez, who brought in, check this out, 400 tons, which translates to 800,000 pounds of cocaine, billions of individual doses of cocaine into our country, to quote, as the president of Honduras said, to shove up the noses of the gringos, as he so sweetly put it. And our alleged America First president pardoned this sick, fascist, anti-gringo drug dealer while his war secretary was blowing up alleged drug boats and killing 84 people with no declaration of war by Congress and no due process, all allegedly in the name of stopping drugs. What a joke. The president pardoned Ross Ulbricht, the mastermind behind the dark web platform Silk Road that was used by drug dealers to sell $214 million worth of narcotics. That guy was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. And yet after Trump pardoned him on day one of his administration, this guy is now back at work, a completely unrepentant criminal and a threat to public safety. So we're being lectured by newly minted anti-fraud fighters who utter not a word about any of these pardons of drug traffickers and organized criminals, but people who said nothing when President Trump illegally sacked 17 inspectors general in our government, the very people who are tasked with rooting out fraud, abuse, and corruption in our government. In 2024, they saved $71 billion alone. And they've been sacked and either not replaced or replaced with a bunch of political hacks. 10 million Americans have already lost their health insurance because of this obscene, ugly bill. A new CMS rule will rip care from 1.8 million Americans. Their plan to kill the ACA tax credit would mean another 4 million American families will no longer have health insurance. Fraud is a criminal wrong and a serious threat to the well-being of our people. And no one's doing more to stop it than the Democrats who built these programs that the fraudsters are going to jail for ripping off before being pardoned by the convicted fraudster president. Every dollar stolen is a threat to the infrastructure of our safety net. And yes, HHS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, DOJ must do a lot more to fight it. We must all fight, not pardon and exonerate the criminals and fraudsters who steal from the American people. But the way to fight fraud is with targeted anti-fraud measures, not to destroy the public programs that actually serve the American people. They want to get rid of health care that we want to protect, and we want to get rid of the fraudsters that they want to pardon. Choose your side. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
In our politics lead today, it was something of a down-to-the-wire decision for Texas Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to run for re-election to her House seat or shoot for the U.S. Senate. Congresswoman announced her bid for Senate on Monday, joining an already somewhat crowded Democratic field. Joining us now is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. So congratulations on your announcement.
Thanks.
Your official announcement is just a video of you, and an image of you, while insults of President Trump of you play in the background. Why that decision? I mean, one of your opponents, Tallarico, he had a video, him with constituents, him with Texans. Why you solo?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to do something different. Because number one, in order to flip the state of Texas, we're going to have to do something that we've never done. So I wanted to stay on brand with the fact that we would be different. I also wanted people to understand who the president sees as a real threat, and it is me. He also made it clear a number of times that he sees me as a leader. Those were his words, not mine. And so I wanted to do that. That's number one. Number two, I wanted to do a real announcement with actual people, nothing that was staged. I wanted the real people, and so it had to be in that moment. So I also wanted to make sure that we delivered a full speech that had all the substance there. So on that same day, if you were paying attention or if you were interested, you got the full meat of what it is that I want to do as the next senator in the state of Texas, as well as I did this with the people right there at home in my district.
So last night you told Laura Coates on this network that you don't need to get all the Trump voters in order to win the Senate seat, assuming you win the Democratic nomination. We should note President Trump won Texas pretty handily by about 14 percentage points. So you don't need every Trump voter, but you need a big chunk of them. Explain the math to me. How does any Democrat, but especially one who is progressive and outspoken, how do you win over Trump voters?
So this is what I want to tell you about. There's two things that we need to talk about that are separate things that I think both of them are necessary to win. Number one, we actually have to turn out more voters. If you do the research on the state of Texas, we typically rank the lowest in voter turnout period in the country. We've got to get that up. I want to say the most recent one that I remember, maybe a little over 50% of people turned out. When we looked at Georgia and we saw Georgia go blue, what they were able to do is they were able to get more people to participate. So that's number one. So for me, it was always about expanding the electorate. Number two, this is a great talking point that we have heard over and over and over, that maybe you need to sound like a Trumper so you can get Trumpers to be on board. But what we know is that there were Trump and Mondami voters. There were Obama and Trump voters. There were AOC and Trump voters. So a lot of people want to distill this down into something as simple as, oh, it's progressive or it's this. But the reality is that people vote for who they believe in. They vote for the people that they believe really care about bettering their lives. And what we know is apparent is that a lot of people have been turned off by Trump. When we look at Tennessee, I'm not asking you to look far north or over in California. When you look at the red state of Tennessee, he won that seat by over 20 points, yet it came within single digits. When you look at Mississippi, they flipped 2 Senate seats. When you look at Georgia on November 4th, they elected 2 Democrats statewide. So what I am saying is people are finally saying, you know what, even those that voted for Trump, because there's plenty that regret it. And I think that those people would be more willing to listen at this point. But I think you've got to expand the electorate, and you've got to talk to anybody who actually says, you know what, he played us.
Let me tell you, let me ask you about a quote that you've made that has some Democrats worried about your ability to win statewide. In a December 2024 Vanity Fair profile, you talked about, quote, and I'm going to read a lot of the quote just to put it in the context, quote, all the complexities within the Latino community. The immigration thing has always been something that has perplexed me about this community. It's basically like, I fought to get here, but I left y'all where I left y'all, and I want no more y'all to come here. If I wanted to be with y'all, I would stay with y'all, but I don't want y'all coming to my new home. It almost reminds me of what people would talk about when they would talk about kind of like slave mentality and the hate that some slaves would have for themselves. It's almost like a slave mentality that they have. Now, about the time that that was published last year, around 1 million Latino voters in Texas were voting for Trump. Do they all have slave mentality?
No, and that's not what that said at all, to be clear. It did not say that every Latino has that type of mentality.
No, but the ones that vote for people who believe in strong or Trump's immigration policies.
So I don't believe that the people that voted for Trump believe in what they're actually getting. That is number one. What Trump said is that he was going to kick out the bad guys. And that's what I was talking about. I've been down to the border. I've been down to South Texas. I've campaigned down there. And so I am talking about exactly what was going on when I was down there on behalf of the Beto campaign. In fact, when he was running for governor, I was sent as a surrogate. And I said, talk to me about what is going on. Why is it that they believe that they can win Latinos down here? Like, I don't understand what's happening. And there were people that were saying that they had fought and they had done everything the right way, and that there were bad people that were coming that were doing it the wrong way. And so they were saying, no, we left. And I mean, when you think about people that are leaving asylum, they are leaving areas and situations that they feel like are harmful to them. So yes, they're like, no, I don't want to be in this dangerous situation. And that's what I meant. But at the same time, I knew what Trump meant, because Trump had a record. Trump had a record of locking up kids and putting them in cages. So I knew what Trump meant. And so that's why it wasn't making sense to me. And ultimately right now, I just came from a joint hearing that we were having on the Senate side. It's the Senate as well as the House. The first time I've had a joint hearing ever since I have been in the House. And I was listening to Latino American citizens that have been arrested by this regime. Some of those people may have voted for Trump. I don't know. But they agree that what he's doing now is wrong. And it's about right versus wrong and not right versus left. And he sold them a bag of goods. And I knew that that's what he was selling because I knew his record.
All right, Jasmine Crockett, we'll leave it there, but we know you'll come back and answer our questions as you always do.
Yes.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, fresh Senate candidate. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, thank you, and I thank my colleague, Senator Merkley. I have spoken often on this matter on the floor in the last few months, and I don't want to belabor points that I have previously made and that I'm likely to make again next week when a war powers resolution is called forward. The timeliness of this is imminent. The news has just broken today that President Trump has ordered the seizure of an oil tanker, not a drug running boat, but an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela that has been seized by the United States Coast Guard. Tensions are escalating, and the Senate is asleep on this matter. I want to just ask this question. Why is this war different than all other wars? Why is this war different than all other wars? There are two significant differences that our colleagues need to grapple with. The first is the numerous warnings and indications from this floor, but also from the United States military leadership and our allies, that the war is illegal. The chief legal advisor of Southern Command in August offered opinions before the boat strike started in September that to do so without congressional authorization was illegal. The head of Southern Command, Admiral Halsey, a decorated 30-plus year veteran of the Navy, an admiral who was 1 year into a 3-year tenure as the leader of Southern Command, was forced to retire prematurely, and the reporting is consistent that he was forced to retire because he raised questions about the legality of these strikes. This is not just Democrats on the floor of the Senate questioning the legality of this military operation. It's U.S. military leadership, including high-ranking Pentagon officials, who are jeopardizing their career to stand in support of their oath and defend the Constitution, and being relieved of command as a result. Our primary ally in the world, the United Kingdom, has stopped sharing intelligence with the United States on activities in the region because they do not want their intelligence to be used to carry out illegal strikes. The aftermath of the slaughter of survivors clinging to a shipwreck in international waters has occasioned huge concerns in this country. I represent one of the most military states in the nation, and many Virginians are deployed on the carrier strike group in the Caribbean, and their families are asking us about the legality of the mission, how long it will last, what is it designed to accomplish, and they are also asking about why the U.S., with a human rights ethos, would be proudly slaughtering survivors on the open seas. The president has said that video could be available to all. Indeed, the president has made the video of the strike available on his social media account, bragging about it, patting himself on the back about it. But now that we're asking for the full video, not just the first strike, but the second strike as well, where survivors were slaughtered, suddenly the Secretary of Defense is walking it back and saying, we need to protect our sources and methods. You need to protect your sources and methods when you've been turning it into a TV commercial, a social media commercial, showing the world about what a tough guy you are. If you're a tough guy and you think you're proud of this, then let the American people see the entire video. Let them watch struggling survivors struck on the high seas in contravention of American and international laws of war. That's the first reason this war is different from all other wars. The questions raised about their legality are a drumbeat that will not be denied or suppressed. And the second reason, and then I'll hand to my other colleagues, that this war is different than all other wars, is with all of that I've shared with you, and so much more that I'd like to share with you that I can't, because what I know from being in a classified setting. Get this, in the Senate of the United States, the greatest deliberative body in the world, 95 days into a war, has the Senate Armed Services Committee held a single public hearing about this war? Has the Senate Foreign Relations Committee held a single public hearing about this war? This war is different than all others because at 95 days and counting, 90 people killed, dozens of military strikes, seizing an oil tanker just a few hours ago, the principal committees in this body and in the House, charged constitutionally with oversight over matters of war, have been hiding their heads in the sand, afraid to put on the table publicly before the American public what's at stake in the legal rationale. If you're doing something you're proud of, you wouldn't need to hide it. If you're doing something you're proud of, you would be glad to have committee hearings and share the story with the American public. The refusal of this body to take this matter up in any meaningful public forum and to shackle members of the Senate who know a lot, but we cannot discuss it because all we know from classified settings, is a demonstration that this administration knows that public scrutiny would make the American public ashamed of what's going on. We need to make this public. We need to have this debate. And we need the American public to understand what's at stake. And with that, I applaud my colleague for what he's introduced, and I'd like to yield.
To Trump's speech could see he simply doesn't get what people are struggling through. He's trapped in his billionaire bubble. In his speech that was supposed to be about affordability, Donald Trump kept making fun of the word affordability. Does he have to go shop for groceries and not be able to buy the things his family needs? When your car is injured in an accident and you don't have money for the deductible and you don't have a car, does he understand that? Donald Trump is in his bubble, and he kept making fun of the word affordability. People are struggling. They can't afford basic needs, and Donald Trump keeps making fun of it by calling it all a giant hoax. But Americans know affordability is not a hoax. They see it as very real every time they go to the grocery store, pay their bills, pay the rent. And Donald Trump just doesn't get it. What was Donald Trump's solution to affordability? Well, last night, Trump said parents should buy their kids fewer dolls for Christmas. We're not talking about fewer dolls for Christmas. We're talking about necessities like food, like medicine, like fixing your car when it gets damaged, like maybe going to see the grandkids who you haven't seen in 2 years because you can't afford the trip. He said kids at school should have fewer pencils. And then he repeated his favorite word was tariffs. What kind of world does he live in? Does he understand that these tariffs are raising prices through the roof? When he said his favorite word was tariffs, the crowd sure didn't like that. His own crowd didn't like that, his own crowd of MAGA people. So Donald Trump simply doesn't get it. It takes a special kind of delusion to tell parents to buy their kids fewer toys and pencils while bragging about new ballrooms and gold in the Oval Office. You cut back on your Christmas presents for your kids who might really want something and have looked you in the eye 10 times and said, Mom, Dad, could I have that? And instead, he's spending money on new ballrooms and gold and brags about it. That's Donald Trump in a nutshell. But that's not all. During an interview released a few hours before this so-called affordability tour, Donald Trump was asked how he'd grade himself on the economy. He said A++++++, but the American people are giving him an F. What crackpot economics did Donald Trump study? An A with 5 pluses? Well, in that case, let's look at the test scores. Over the last year, the price of beef has gone up at the grocery store by 20%. That's an F. Today, Americans pay 40% more for a single cup of coffee on their way to work than they did last year. That's an F. People are paying more on electricity bills while Donald Trump has cut domestic energy jobs. That's a massive F. People are paying more for clothing, more for produce. And this week, our farmers had to be bailed out with taxpayer dollars because of Donald Trump's disastrous tariffs. The final grade, a big fat F. In no universe does Donald Trump deserve anywhere close to an A, a B, or even a C for his job on the economy. The reality is Donald Trump is a failure of a president and a failure on the American economy. And I'm not the ones giving Donald Trump a grade, it's the people themselves. Last night, while Donald Trump was mocking affordability in Pennsylvania, voters in Georgia and Florida gave him a big, fat F. In Georgia, just 1 year ago, Democrats lost that state House district by 22 points. Last night, they won it. We've had the first Democratic mayor in Miami in 30 years, what used to be a Republican redoubt. Those elections are another warning shot from the ballot box. Americans are tired of paying more for things they need. They are tired of Donald Trump mocking them because they can't afford the things they need. I warn my Republican colleagues, as Florida and Georgia elections last night showed, you follow Donald Trump to your own doom and our country's doom. Donald Trump might claim he deserves an A++++, but at the ballot box, he's clearly getting an F. Now on health care, related. Tomorrow is a moment of truth for Senate Republicans. Are they going to help bring health care costs down? Or are they going to sabotage our health care system and send premiums through the roof? That's what's at stake when the Senate votes tomorrow. We have 21 days until January 1st. After that, people's health care bills will start going through the roof, double, triple, even more. People will not be able to afford their health care. Millions will lose it altogether. Tens of millions will pay much more than they can afford. As deductibles and copays go up, as different doctors leave plans, and you have to find a whole, you could have had a doctor that's been treating your child for a chronic condition for years. You trust the doctor. She or he is gone. Got to start all over with someone who's less accessible, less friendly, and more expensive. So, there's only one way to avoid all this. The only realistic path left is what Democrats are proposing, a clean, direct extension of current tax credits. But even now, it looks like Republicans still don't get it. Yesterday, Leader Thune announced he'd bring another proposal, a Republican proposal, if you can even call it that, to the floor. The Cassidy-Crapo hodgepodge of half-baked ideas, whose fundamental core idea has failed over and over again. I want to be very clear about what this Republican bill represents. Junk insurance. Let me tell my Republican colleagues it's dead on arrival. The proposal does nothing to bring down sky-high premiums. It doesn't extend the ACA premiums by a single day. Instead, Republicans want to send people $80 a month and pretend that's going to fix everything. It's a you're-on-your-own bill. You got a sick kid? You have cancer? You need a complete top-to-bottom checkup because something's ailing you? The Republicans are telling you, Americans, you're on your own. We're not helping you. That's what they say. Republicans want to send people $80 a month and pretend that's going to fix everything? And to even qualify for a check, you got to sign up for a bronze plan that comes with outrageously high deductibles, $7,500, even $10,000 for individuals. Under the Cassidy-Crapo plan, a 60-year-old Florida couple making $85,000 would see premiums go up by $21,000. And their deductible would go from $0 to $7,000. That's a $28,000 net taking out of their pockets. How are they going to pay for it? Republicans, you got an answer for them? This junk insurance won't help them one bit. This is not, Cassidy-Crapo is not a health care plan. It's not a plan at all. It's an excuse. It's a fig leaf. Because Republicans are so divided and can't come up with a plan that unites them, they have proposed this fig leaf. My guess is most Republicans themselves are grimacing that they even have to vote for this thing. How is a one-time check going to help you if you're paying $1,000 or $2,000 a month more for health insurance? The Cassidy-Crapo plan, even if you can call it that, is downright insulting. What we need to do is prevent our premiums from skyrocketing, and only our bill does it. It's the last train out of the station to avoid these sky-high premiums from going up and up and up. What we need to do is prevent premiums from skyrocketing, and only our bill does it. It is the last train out of the station. I repeat. But Republicans, they seem to care more about banning abortion than lowering premiums. This bill is loaded with a poison pill, so everyone knows it can't come close to passing. By putting that poison abortion pill in it, they basically are saying to Democrats, forget about it. You won't, there's not even close that you can't even come close to realizing that this might be the basis of any compromise, aside from how bad the plan is altogether. So the bottom line, the Republicans do not have a serious plan to fix our health care problems, but we Democrats do, a clean, simple extension to prevent premiums from rising and rising and rising. Republicans still have a day to do the right thing. Republicans, we're fighting for the American people. You're fighting with each other. Stop fighting with each other. Try to help the American people and vote for our plan. I implore my Republican colleagues, we need just 13 of you to push this bill over the finish line. If Republicans vote this bill down, they will unleash health care chaos throughout the country. And finally, on the Hegseth briefing of yesterday. During yesterday's Gang of Eight briefing, I asked Secretary Hegseth directly, will he let every member of Congress see the full, unedited tapes of the September 2nd boat strike? Secretary Hegseth's answer? He said, we have to study it. What the hell has he been doing for the last 3 months? Hegseth and DOD have had more than enough time to study this. It's time for all members of Congress to see the tapes for themselves. I told Secretary Hegseth that every member of Congress, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate, want to see the tapes. Both parties are united in demanding that the tapes be released. Our Republican chairman of Armed Services and our Democratic ranking member of Armed Services made a request together. This is not a partisan issue. Both parties are united in demanding the tapes be released, not only to Congress, but to the American people as well. So the American people want to have the transparency they deserve. Hegseth is resisting that transparency. What is he hiding? What is DOD hiding? And what is President Trump hiding? That's the question the American people are asking when it comes to Hegseth's cover-up of these tapes, these videos. At the meeting, I also pressed Secretaries Rubio and Hegseth on the administration's recent military action in the Caribbean. I wanted to know, what are their plans? How far are they going? Is Donald Trump about to drag America into another endless war? And again, I didn't get any satisfying answers. When it comes to matters of war and peace, Congress needs the truth. The American people need transparency. Anything less is a total disservice to our men and women in uniform and to every citizen of this country. I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
Hegseth has requested he be briefed by December 10th, this coming Wednesday, on the results of a review into Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly and comments he made in a video urging service members to not obey any illegal orders from the Trump administration. Joining us now is retired Navy captain and Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly. Senator Kelly, thank you again for coming back to the weekend. So right out of this intro, what are you anticipating from this Navy investigation that Hegseth ordered that has the deadline of this Wednesday, December 10th?
Well, here's the interesting thing about this. I still have not been notified by the United States Navy. Nothing. I saw a tweet from Pete Hegseth maybe about a week and a half ago. That's it. Crickets. Nothing. And
still.
You know, still, yeah. And they're supposed to provide a report back to him in a couple days. They're going to trying to take great lengths, going to great lengths to try to silence me, but it's not going to happen. I'm not going to back down. I said something that was true and lawful, told members of the military they need to follow the law. Ironically, in 2016, Pete Hegseth said the same exact thing. Think about the hypocrisy of this. He said the same thing that I said, and he thinks he's going to court-martial me under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's ridiculous.
Well, Senator, you brought up the 2016 sound from Pete Hegseth. We actually have it. Let's play it for our viewers.
I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. There's a standard, there's an ethos, there's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would do.
Senator, we want to make sure people saw that, but I also want to get your response to Senator Tom Cotton, your colleague in the Senate. He was just on Meet the Press, and this is a rough transcript of what he said. They were not floating in the ocean on a wooden plank or in life jackets. They were on the capsized vessel that, as we remember, is broken in half. They were not incapacitated in any way. It was appropriate to strike the boat again to make sure its cargo was destroyed. It was in no way a violation of the law of war. And I think the Washington Post owes Secretary Hegseth and especially Admiral Bradley an apology for that slander. I assume that you don't agree with Senator Tom Cotton on his reaction to the video that was shown to senators and members of the House this week.
I do not. I think he saw the video. I have not seen it yet. It was to leadership on the Senate Armed Services and the Intelligence Committees. I'm on both of those committees. I've asked the chairman and the ranking member for a full hearing, put people under oath, public hearing, and release the video. They released part of the video already. And I think what's interesting about, what Tom said is, in another circumstance, another strike that happened later, there were 2 survivors as well. Those survivors were, they were rescued, and then they were released back to their home countries. So on one hand, we release people. On the other hand, they die. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But I'm not going to prejudge this. I want to see the video. I want to see an investigation. I also think the legal analysis for why this entire operation is above board, that should be released as well.
Do you believe that the leadership of the committee is willing to subpoena Hegseth, subpoena the video in order to make sure that it gets released? Because I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of faith that this administration is going to do it on their own.
Well, we can do that. And I've talked to the chairman of the committee about this already and about, having the chance to do our oversight responsibility and that there be some accountability. So we're going to see this week. If we get a full brief of the committee, we've got to get to the bottom of this. This is not consistent, doesn't appear to be consistent with our morals, with the way the U.S. Department of Defense has conducted itself. I served in the Navy for 25 years. I've been in combat. I've sunk 2 ships myself. I've got a lot of questions about how this operation is being conducted.
Senator, I'm wondering if, back to your potential court-martialing that is scheduled for this week, is there any conversation amongst you and the other lawmakers who participated in this video about suing the administration back? We had Eric Swalwell on last week, who has taken action against Bill Pulte and the Federal Housing Finance Agency and is suing them on the basis of violation of the Privacy Act and First Amendment rights. Is this something that's under discussion when you say that the administration wants to silence you and you're not going to be silenced?
Well, they're clearly in violation of my First Amendment rights. I said something, that was lawful. It was pretty simple. It was a message that I felt members of the military at this time, when you consider who this president is and who the Secretary of Defense is, they needed to hear, this pretty basic message. And there wasn't anything wrong with it. I didn't expect this response from the president. But he's trying to silence me, but he's not silencing me. I'm still speaking out. I still am going to do my job every single day, regardless of whether this president wants to kill me, hang me, execute me, or shut me up. I'm not going to shut up. Litigation, coming from me, it's not like in my nature, to do that. I'm going to respond. I've got, a legal team that will respond to whether it's DOD or DOJ forcefully, because they're in the wrong here. And I think people know it. And it's kind of a ridiculous proposition that because of something I said, they want to either kill me or now prosecute me under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's ridiculous.
And I want to get back to the strike again quickly. It seemed last week, on the heels of this Washington Post double tap report, that there was a groundswell, an uprising from Republicans who were just as angry as Democrats over what they had read. That seems to have died down a little in the wake of the briefing of Republican leadership officials who spoke with Admiral Bradley, who came out of that briefing and had positive things to say about his decision-making process. When you have spoken with your Republican colleagues, what sense are you getting from them? Does it align with what they're publicly saying at this point?
Well, maybe you're hearing from different folks publicly than the individuals that I've spoken to. I've spoken to Republican colleagues that still have serious concerns about how this strike was conducted and whether or not it was lawful.
Really quickly, Lee, before we let you go, the Pentagon IG released a report this week on Signalgate with Pete Hegseth. You have been very critical of him on many fronts, but especially on that Signalgate where Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, ended up in there. What's your reaction to the IG report and to what Pete Hegseth says, I don't live with any regrets, when he said, and said that he was totally exonerated? What's your reaction to the IG report?
Well, the inspectors general said that he put members of the military at risk. As the Secretary of Defense, he's supposed to be the guy that's looking out for them. He doesn't look out for anybody. I mean, when you see what happened with this boat strike, I mean, it's not leadership to throw your people under the bus. I mean, he turned around and ran away from this as fast as he could. Hey, I've flown strikes off of aircraft carriers. What he put on Signal was very damaging and put those pilots, those young men and women, at significant risk. He should take responsibility for this, but we know who he is. He is the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in our country's history by far. And I don't expect, him to own up for this or what's happening in the Caribbean or anything else. For that reason, the president should fire him. Should have fired him after Signalgate. Should have never been nominated in the first place. But it's clear to me that he is not the right person for this job. And I think members of the military know it as well.